Here we go. Try again. All right. Here we go. And that's time. Here we go. Why do you suppose I just hurled something at you?
I don't know.
Sure you did.
The tempo?
Were you rushing or dragging?
I don't know.
Start counting.
5, 6, 7.
In 4! Damn it, look at me. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Now, was I rushing or dragging?
I don't know.
Let's try it again. Go.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
Now, was I rushing or was I dragging?
Rushing.
So you do know the difference.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Tavern Talk. I'm Philip, and joining me this week, Mr. Chad Bradford. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be here with you.
No, if people knew the road we had to travel to get here,
Very true.
they would probably appreciate this a lot
Yes.
more. But I am very appreciative, not only
thank you.
for making this happen over the holiday break, but for sitting through a 3-hour plus movie with me.
Man, this film is long.
Yes.
But no, you obviously have a busy schedule, small child. You're the director of the Arkansas Shakespeare Theater, and so thank you for just taking time out of that schedule.
Well, I
to do
appreciate it. I've been keeping an eye on this. On your series on Tavern Talk for a couple of years now. Just a lot of my buddies have been on it, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to do this too. So it's really cool.
That's cool to hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so you kind of are working as a director of a theater group or project, but you have acted yourself for a long time as well.
Yeah. Before I got into kind of on the other side of the table, working in artistic directing, managing directing, that kind of thing. My whole career was acting and directing before I started doing that, and so it's really cool to kind of have both of those balancing my head. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but watching the film that I watched today.
Right. No, that is. I mean, that was the segue I was going to use.
Yeah.
Too.
Right.
Like that's kind of why I wanted, not just. A film critic necessarily perspective on this, but I wanted someone who maybe has has played a part in the industry or in the bringing characters to life and that side of things. So I'm really happy to get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah.
But this week we saw Damien Chazelle's Babylon. It is his follow-up to First Man. He has also directed Whiplash and La La Land. La La Land is probably the most interesting comparison here from where he came from to where we are with Babylon. This is it's essentially just diving into that last run of silent era movies.
Yes.
And how that transition happened into talking pictures and then eventually into Technicolor pictures and all that stuff. And it follows a couple different groups of people or a couple different individuals on their journey. And it's largely about their character arcs through this time period. So we'll start there. We just walked out of the theater, just experienced this, and I feel comfortable calling it an experience for sure. But what was your initial reaction to it?
It's funny because the whole time you're watching, you're thinking, oh, it's this kind of film. Oh, it's this kind of thing. Oh, it's this kind of thing. And the more you're sitting there and the more you're kind of becoming immersed in the world that's being created, the more you're really realizing the rug's being pulled out from under you every other scene.
Right.
Because as soon as you have it figured out, it's going to go this way or it's going to go that way, it seems to change direction all the way through the end when you get, clips from all number of different kind of influences without giving any spoilers. It just seems to get very postmodern all of a sudden at the end. It feels like it's going to bookend and be balanced, but then it just kind of throws that. It's almost as if you take La La Land and you kind of, run it through the gutter a little bit.
100%. That's exactly.
And all the beauty that entails as well, But boy, it was. I texted my wife right after. I was like, "That was the craziest freaking movie. I cannot believe I just sat through."
It's interesting because it's. La La Land was such. I mean, even though it had its, kind of heartbreaking aspect to it. It was very kind of like this idealized version of what you imagine kind of like the rising and falling star thing to be, the dreams and aspirations and what happens when you make it and don't make it and all that stuff. But yeah, this one is like the complete, like it's the brutal, like you're saying, just nasty kind of underbelly of... And one way I've heard it described that I really liked is like Babylon shows the like how dirty and ugly it can be to create something so beautiful on the other side.
Yes.
It's like people sitting in a theater watching this magical escapism and everything, but what it took to actually get that on the screen is so the opposite of it.
And how it evolved.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning it's like a Western at the beginning, because down to, horses and guns and the whole thing. You feel like, I had a professor for a while who used to do, go throughout the country doing theater, and he talked about, coming to Arkansas in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, man, it was like the Wild West still down there.
Really?
And I think about looking at these early pictures where, but before you have actors unions, before you have craft services and all that kind of thing, and things are kind of, and the art form, the industry has matured, and you see it's just chaos, really.
Yes.
It's just this beautiful, controlled chaos, and it explores that in such a brilliant way. I thought I loved how the beginning of the movie just puts you in a blender, and it's like 15 minutes in, and then you get the opening credits.
Right? Yeah.
And it's that's what this is going to be about.
I'm a sucker for that too. Whenever you like wait 15 minutes, half an hour even, and then throw your title screen up there, I'm like, yes. I'm in.
It's so cool.
And that the way it like leads up to that title screen too, with there's a line right before it. I think Brad Pitt might say it was like best place on earth, talking about a movie set.
Yes.
And then it just hits you. I was like, yes, I'm totally in. But yeah, you're right. It's interesting because a lot of this kind of plays on talking about idealized versions of things, like Singing in the Rain.
Yes.
And I was introduced to Singing in the Rain really early. Like that movie's always kind of held a special place, and I just kind of accepted that as how the transition from like silent movies to talkies happened. Like, no, it's the humorous, the lighthearted touches to it and everything. But to see how it affects a lot of the people here, and how especially like, I guess we can kind of mention some of the characters here, but like Brad Pitt's Jack Conrad, who's kind of like the matinee idol. He's kind of explained to us as like the highest paid actor at this studio. It's called Kinescope. I think it's a fictional studio, but you get mentions of MGM and Warner's and all that stuff. And then you have kind of our like conduit into the world is a guy named Manny Torres, played by Diego Calva, who's kind of a newcomer. And then you have Margot Robbie playing Nellie Leroy, who is kind of making her way into the industry right as the silent era is ending, and has to like figure out how she plays into this world or fits into it. And I just thought the way it tracked those. You've also got Sidney Palmer characters, Ho Vanna-Depo, and the Lady Faye, Lee Jun Lee, who plays her. And I hadn't seen either of them before, but like he's a black guy in the 20s, she's of Asian descent, and they both like he plays in the band at a lot of these parties, but kind of steps. Calva's character kind of introduces him into the world of movies and everything, and then Lady Faye is like. She's a performer, but she writes the title cards for the silent movies, and but they're both kind of ignored as far as their talents go. Right. Like their singular talents, and more just used for what they can bring to other people's pictures, essentially. And it's interesting because the movie kind of sidelines them a little bit too.
It does,
but and I can't tell if that was intentional because of like mirroring how they were treated at that time period, or if he just like. Kind of did the same thing he was talking about.
Right.
But I think he was probably aware of it, but I don't know if that'll come off to everybody.
Right. And I think it's interesting because I kept thinking, what are they saying about the film industry and the entertainment industry? Because I think it's after it was over, thinking about even just the title Babylon, there's something mythic, there's something untouchable, something mysterious about that. But also it has this kind of, implications of something grand, something, epic.
Yeah.
And so it almost felt like these characters that were coming in and out that you get to, in this kind of character study, it's like, if you stay in it, what's going to happen if you stay in Babylon,
right?
Versus the people that decide they're going to make an exit,
right?
And I thought and so those characters you're talking about, it felt like, oh, well, when you're addicted to Babylon, when you're addicted to this drug called the entertainment industry, how do you deal with this addiction?
Right.
And I think that there's parallels through that in some of the storyline as well.
No, that's true, because before I kind of went off on the character tangent there, was singing about Singing in the Rain and how he kind of uses that here. Historically, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I know that Chazelle drew from a lot of inspirations in that era, and uses that kind of debauchery to show that it wasn't always this kind of clean and very catered image that even by the time 1952 when Singing in the Rain came out, that, not to spoil too much, but we kind of get a glimpse of that at the end of the film, and it's all very well manicured and catered and everything like this. You can tell the difference in how the studios operated and everything. And so it was just interesting to see even by that time, which by the time we were born, Singing in the Rain was forever ago.
Yes.
And so it was even by that time, Hollywood had already begun to kind of clean itself up a little bit. And so, it's interesting to even go back further before that, where there was no, large amount of documentation to kind of correct these people in their debauchery.
When we think about the golden days of Hollywood, or think about, we get into this kind of film nostalgia stuff, it backs up to the 50s, it backs up to the 40s. It doesn't necessarily back up all the way to where this movie starts in the 20s, where you get to see that there was no system of how you do this or that. They were making
it up. Yeah, exactly.
And that was, I thought, for me, that was the most effective part, because just, as someone who's worked in that, just in creative works, it's that kind of chaos, that kind of inventiveness can only happen in those kind of, powder keg kind of environments.
Right.
You have to have the kind of fuel to be able to light a fire, and sometimes if you don't control it, you'll burn yourself up.
Yeah, exactly. And it's those, I agree, those early scenes where you've got a cameo from Spike Jonze as this crazy director shooting this war epic, and just seeing that unfold, that stuff was some of the most just invigorating stuff to me. I really enjoyed it, and obviously want to talk to you as an actor about some of the performances and everything. One name we haven't mentioned yet is Jean Smart, who plays kind of a gossip reporter, kind of based on I guess of that time would be Luella Parsons or somebody like that, and she gets kind of the grandstanding monologue of sorts, of the summation of the movie, but it really worked for me this time around, and she was obviously Margot Robbie is just kind of electric, but I thought Jean Smart and Brad Pitt in more kind of underplayed roles really kind of hit their marks.
I agree. It was really fun to watch how you go from this spectacle and you have this one shot kind of going all over the place to just a real quiet two-hander.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. And in that scene in particular, it was great to get kind of the manifesto for the film out of the mouth of a character that you don't know how you necessarily feel about.
Right.
Rather than it being the hero giving you the thesis of the director. Here's what this is all about. But there was something beautiful about her monologue talking about how the movies just in general are ghosts in our lives right now.
Right.
The way that we're dressed right now, it's affected by this kind of cultural history that is a century old now.
Right. Right. Exactly.
That we are participating in this kind of, ghost story. It's just really, I thought that monologue really worked. And it brought this kind of the mythic theme of Babylon even
full circle,
further, because you feel like Babylon lives in myth.
Yeah, because the movie does ultimately revels in like the myths of old Hollywood and like, but it also, at the same time is kind of deconstructing the myths through the characters and how they had to actually deal with, the real ramifications of these life-changing things that were happening and the technology that was advancing and progressing. And and especially, that speech really hit, and just how Brad Pitt's character reacts to it. And then of course, like the Margot Robbie character is kind of predictable in her downfall and everything. But I just, the way she comes onto the scene, and it just like, I don't know, she just seems to just like, no matter who she's playing, it just feels genuine. Like she's not faking it. And I feel like that's something you can't necessarily teach. I don't know. Like,
it's wild. She has this line that gets kind of repeated. It's like, they're not going to make me a star. You are a star.
Right. You're either born one or you're not.
It's written in the stars. I am a star.
Right.
Yeah.
And my God, come on.
She's
one of them.
Yeah.
And as much as you can't necessarily teach that kind of mentality, it's something you can work your way. You can work your way into. But I felt like, her performance, I was just mesmerized, because she was able to not only play, kind of what you're kind of predicting is going to happen from this kind of archetype of the kind of wild actress. Right? But then she puts this kind of really nice depth to it as well. That's just really kind of delightful to see. Her, Brad Pitt's character, all of the leads, you really got to get into a nice little character study there. Yeah. And I agree with you that kind of the way that it ended up with her was a little bit unsatisfying. Yeah. And that would be my biggest critique here is just, we spend so much time getting to know some of these people. I wanted to see the fullness of their outcome. Yeah. And maybe that's not, and I can see why that's, why the filmmakers didn't want to give you that satisfaction. Yeah. I totally get that, but we spent 3 hours with you guys.
Right. Yeah, and her, like, it does feel unavoidable where we're headed with her, but for a 3-hour movie, it did seem like really well paced, and I was into it. Like I was invested for sure. But by that third hour, and we get to the section featuring Tobey Maguire.
Yes.
And which is fun in and of itself. But like I felt like while watching it, I was like, this part, like this whole confrontation felt like it was like, okay, here we're going a little bit to where maybe we could have used some restraint or something. And it didn't feel, and I only say that like I enjoyed part of it, and just because it was another glimpse at like underground LA in the 20s or whatever. But like at the same time, it was like the part that felt the least like assured directorially.
I hear that. Yeah. There were parts of the movie where you feel like you're going along the narrative stream here, and then all of a sudden you're like, where are we?
Right.
What world is this? And that does help, I agree, with the pace of it. You don't feel like, okay, come on.
Right.
But at the same time, you're like, could we have invested a little bit more of that time over here with this person rather than going into the bowels of the earth?
I don't think I can even say on here what Toby referred to it as.
Oh, my God.
Well, before we get to star ratings, the other moment I wanted to talk with you about, it was one of the, probably one of my favorite scenes of the year, one of the best things I've seen in a movie, which is like the sound stage scene when they first have to incorporate sound into the production. And shout out to like PJ Byrne, who is like a second director or assistant director. And then Damien Chazelle's wife plays like the female director of those times, which is like, that's one of those things, again, with Margot Robbie, like her character feels a little modern. And like you think the director might drop this in, like this female director. But that was actually like based in truth of the time as well. His wife, Olivia Hamilton, plays this lady named Ruth Adler, but I think she's based on a lady named Dorothy Arzner, who actually directed like, I think, 20 or something films between the late 20s, early 40s. And so like that stuff like feels like it may be for today, but is actually based in some kind of fact, which I thought was cool. But yeah, that whole scene where like that could just be shown by itself. Like he could have sold me on the movie with that scene alone.
Right. I mean, you mentioned the history, and like I think if you're a cinephile, if you're someone who just adores film, I think there's enough in there to like, you're going to enjoy what's the kind of the kind of decoupage being
Right.
thrown at you
Yeah.
of history but fiction. I thought that was, that part of me really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing I've had to kind of like reconcile with myself too. It's like I'm a sucker for this stuff.
Yes.
Like I'm
Yes.
gonna be like you're telling a movie about old Hollywood. Like, listen, I've listened to You Must Remember This and Karina Longworth's podcast and all that. Like, I'm in. Like, I've heard
Yes.
these stories, on my drives. Of course, I want to see them brought to life on the big
Yes.
screen. But enough about all that, I guess. Let's get to some. So at the end of each review, again, we just walked out of the theater, obviously.
Yes.
So this is a kind of a gut reaction, but we do an out of 5-star rating. So
Okay.
what would be your initial reaction
All right.
rating for Babylon?
I got 2 ratings for
Okay,
you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
As someone who loves history and cinema, I feel, for me,
Yeah.
I would give it 4.
Yeah.
I'd give it 4 stars. Just anybody coming off the street that doesn't like eat and breathe and chew this stuff up.
Right.
It's a 3.5.
Yeah.
I just in trying to put myself in someone else's
No,
shoes.
yeah,
But for me, I enjoyed it.
Especially because like he goes for it that first half hour.
Yeah.
That first like extended party sequence. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody who was just like, yeah, we'll try this one. It's got Brad Pitt in it. You
Yeah.
know, if they were like 15 minutes and we're like, we're out. You know,
Yes.
that's enough of that. Yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying. Like you said, I'm right there with you though. For me, this was a solid 4. I don't know if it like transcends to the top, like to be like. To kind of belong like with the classics or anything
Right.
like that. I don't know if it necessarily is a great movie on its own, but for the ambition, for just like kind of the technical prowess in a lot of this stuff,
Right.
for a lot of the performance, for just juggling a lot of this, the themes and the characters in the screenplay alone, I enjoyed so much more of it than that I didn't. So
Right.
yeah, I'm gonna go.
It was very impressive.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I'm gonna go 4 as well.
right,
Like
cool.
I'm right there with you.
Good.
No, I'm glad you liked it because it could have gone a very different way.
It's an
I guess, if you
investment.
yeah. You made me sit through what? What was that? It could have very easily gone
Yes.
that way. So no. Once again, thank you for that.
Thank you.
and thank you for being here. I really
Appreciate you.
appreciate it. Like you said, investment. So thank you for taking the time to do
Yes.
this. But thank you guys also for watching. If you haven't already, hit the little subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. All that stuff helps. But we try to produce a new review of the biggest reviews that open in movie theaters. So check that out. And thank you to, speaking of movie theaters, the Movie Tavern for letting us see the movie here, shoot the show in their theater. But yeah, that's it for this week. Let us know what you thought of Babylon if you saw it. Drop a comment and let me know if you walked out in the first 15 minutes or if you stuck out the whole 3 hours. But no, thank you guys for watching. Thank you once again,
Thank
Chad.
you.
And we'll see y'all next time. Peace.